in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. For others but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the family's refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
President Trump telling reporters in the Rose Garden Tuesday he's pleased that more documents pertaining to the FBI's Russia investigation have been declassified, including the transcript of a phone call between former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and the then Russian ambassador.
This was an attempted coup by a bunch of dirty cops and others.
The new Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, will decide if and when the declassified documents will be released. The House this week is expected to pass legislation that would give small employers more time to take advantage of federal subsidies for payroll and other costs in an effort to make it easier for them to reopen their businesses. Because of the CARES Act, some American workers who've been laid off because of the coronavirus shutdowns are actually getting more money now with state unemployment and a federal benefit. But as businesses reopen, the windfall could be coming to an end.
Red Bank, New Jersey CPA Chris Whalen says some of his clients are asking him if it's okay to stay home and collect benefits if they're called back to work. The answer, he says, is no.
Technically, if you're offered your job back, you need to go back to work and you can no longer claim benefits in a legal sense. So it's technically committing fraud at that moment.
Whalen says people who continue to collect money when offered their jobs back may be forced to return every dime they've collected or even face legal penalties. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
The lights will be coming back on along the Las Vegas Strip next week. Nevada's Governor Steve Sisolak announcing that casinos can reopen on Monday with social distancing in place. They've been silent for 2.5 months. The governor also allowing in-person church services to resume Friday, but with limits on congregation sizes. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla, Chamorro Fusion, Bistro in Hagaya and Tuman are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla, Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Hafidi, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years. Tall Tales is also brought to you by Security Title, making sure you actually own the property you think you just bought.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I start the program that way every day as a tip-off as to where this program's, as they say, head is at. The United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, individual freedoms, conservatism, libertarianism. These are the grounding principles for Tall Tales. And, of course, since the name of the program is Tall Tales, you can expect a little bit of exaggeration from time to time. And when I engage in a facetious comment, the real Joe Cruz will tip you off with this song. Yeah. A few weeks ago, I was engaging in my usual facetious exaggeration, and I found out later that one of our listeners took me literally and was somewhat amazed at my stupidity for having made the remark that I made. So as a device to alert you to my oftentimes extremely subtle, facetious exaggerations and other comments, we have equipped the real Joe Cruz with this signal. Thank you very much, real Joe Cruz.
You're welcome, sir. Sometimes I even miss it.
Okay. That's not a good sign. You know, if you gotta explain it, it probably isn't very funny, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so we go from the Second Amendment straight into Zemi Ikotny. Start out Zemi Ikotny, which is my backwards bilingual play on words that translates into Meet the Press. I start out by telling you how disappointed I am in the Daily News because they almost never run local editorials. They run boilerplate from USA Today or Gannett Service, Gannett News Service that perhaps has broad application, but doesn't mean anything to us living out here in the most desirable place on earth to live. So I don't pay much attention to the Daily News editorials except to roundly criticize them and let them know that I'm watching. And I go from there to the Guam Daily Post, which does a pretty good job most of the time. Sad to say they got an F for an editorial that ran over the weekend, but ordinarily they do a pretty good job. Today, small businesses do need the GRT reduced for survival. A Guam bankruptcy attorney, Gary Gumatautau, gave a somber opinion in a story in the Post on Tuesday that small businesses struggling to make ends meet and pay their debts after nearly 3 months of little to zero revenue could simply close up shop. Many of our small businesses that have been crushed by the Wuhan virus economic downturn won't even have the resources or energy left to go to the federal bankruptcy court to seek protection from creditors as they struggle to survive, according to Gumatautau's view. You know, even according to, if you want to declare bankruptcy, there's a filing fee and you got to hire a lawyer. And going on here, in this environment, the bankruptcy attorney contends it may be just a matter of time before small businesses and consumers run out of cash. That is, if they haven't already reached the edge of their financial cliff. And I'm going to mention this probably more than once during this program today. There is a food distribution run by the Department of Education with a couple of charitable donors that runs a food distribution line that starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this morning, I think they had to cut it off at 6 o'clock because there were so many cars in line for that food distribution that they couldn't handle them all. So the announcement has now been made that no cards will be able to line up before the opening time of the food distribution, borrowing a page from the commissary down at Naval Station. So it just kind of goes to show you that there are an awful lot of people on this island that are really up against it. To get up that early in the morning and to sit in a long line for a bag of canned goods. Anyhow, going back to the editorial, one would expect the business bankruptcy petitions to increase during this pandemic, but many owners will simply close up shop and walk away, Gomatau said. In spite of the odds that are stacked against small businesses, particularly the ones who haven't received the federal low land programs or grants, some are trying. Many Guam residents have arranged their seating and removed tables to comply with the 50% occupancy rule that the local government social distancing policy requires them to follow. I got to interrupt here. You would not find anyone who understood business planning designing a restaurant that could operate on a break-even basis if only 50% of its area were occupied. It doesn't make sense. You want the area of your restaurant to be about the same size as the kind of crowds that you're going to deal with. Anything else is a waste of money. So if you could make a profit on 50% of your occupancy, why is your restaurant twice as big as what you need? So, of course, the only answer to this is that most restaurants won't be able to be profitable if they can only use half their floor space. A word that I always have I almost need a dictionary whenever I see they, because I used to know exactly what it means, but I don't anymore. But in this case, I think they means the businesses. They're making this sacrifice, which could equate to a 50% reduction in customer traffic, just so they're allowed to reopen and make a little bit of cash for hoped for, but not guaranteed, survival. For now, they're waiting for the local government's green light. As time continues to pass by, with little cash flow coming in, the restaurateurs on Guam and other small businesses that are now seeing fewer customer traffic You could see fewer customers. You could see a smaller amount of customer traffic, but you can't see fewer customer traffic. Blue pencil. Fewer customer traffic and reduced income are counting on the government of Guam to give a little. The government of Guam will give a little, but only if you are in that preferred class of our people, meaning if you work for the government of Guam. Otherwise, you're SOL. And one of the more immediate forms of assistance Gov Guam can give is a reduction in the gross receipts tax. Some of the island's small businesses have said over and over again, Gov Guam should share the pain small businesses are going through by reducing the GRT, even for a brief period of a year or two. I remember the governor, we had quite a flap about increasing the GRT. We weren't going to do it, and then we were going to do it, and then it was going to sunset and turn into a sales tax, and then the sales tax was taken away, and the sunset was taken away, and then we wound up with a 5% GRT, and when the Governor Guerrero was asked about it, well, how long do you want to see the 5% GRT stay in place? What did she say, Real Joe Cruz?
Forever.
Forever. Yeah.
And ever and ever.
Yeah, very good, Real Joe Cruz. And one of the more immediate forms of assistance, Gov, as you were, the local government hasn't been receptive to calls for a reduced GRT. The GRT is one of the two main local sources of funding for payroll, as well as for payments to government debts to bond creditors. Gov Guam should revisit the GRT issue as one way to help save local businesses and the private sector jobs they're trying to sustain. At some point, if Gov Guam will be unwilling to give small businesses the support they're asking for, the local government will see its cash flow decrease over time anyway. The domino effect will also ripple through Gov Guam when fewer jobs will be sustained and fewer employers can survive this pandemic. And arguing against a GRT reduction, Gov Guam will likely point out that, yes, it's trying to help small businesses by offering federally funded small business grants through GITA. The agency plans to release $1,000 to $30,000 in grants to each qualified small business that applies, depending on previously reported gross receipts tax. But the program will be capped at $20,000 because that's the money available from the federal government under the CARES Act. For small business, this grant will help for a brief period, but it's not going to be enough to keep their shops open in the longer term, as more restrictions remain and as tourism will take months to start to recover. What will it take for Gov Guam to move on the GRT reduction? What will it take? I don't know, some economic X-lax, I guess.
You're kidding, right, sir?
They seem to be pretty bound up on this 5% GRT. I don't know where you could buy economic X-lax, but if we could find it, that's certainly what we need. So, come to the end of the editorial here. One glaring grammatical mistake, but other than that, a pretty passable editorial. So once again, the Guam Daily Post gets the coveted Blue Star Award. And that takes the Post up to 201 blue stars versus 57 for the Daily News. Okay, so I go from there to the card. And this is what I have on today's card. I've got, let's see, Troy versus Janella, as usual. I've got Tina versus Health and Safety Emergency. I've got Ken, the other Governor Leon Guerrero versus Raging Lee and Titano. I've got an Oklahoma Attorney General, former Attorney General, versus Gods and Arrows. Jim Moylan versus Therese Paris, Gillette Leon Guerrero, and Janella. And then I've got Courts versus Legislature, which has been on the card for quite some time, as dueling senators versus lawyers, reality versus double pay, Casanova versus Rule 8.406, pandering, demagoguery, and emotion versus the law, Levin versus Joe San Augustine and Jim Moylan. So I'll bet you dollars to donuts this is another Joe, without even looking at my
oh, no,
stack.
sir.
Oh, it's Jimmy.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. Answering the question, whatever happened to Jimmy?
Oh, howdy.
Oh, hi, Jimmy.
You know what they say about getting old?
What do they say about getting old, Jimmy?
Getting old is a terrible thing. But if you're lucky, it'll happen to you. But
yeah, I guess you're right, Jimmy. Yeah.
But anyway, I guess I'm getting old because, you know, after I eat lunch, I take a nap.
Okay.
And sometimes the nap goes on and I miss your show.
Uh-oh.
But I was happy to find you are on YouTube.
I am on YouTube.
I heard somebody taking my name in vain yesterday.
Uh-oh.
And, but anyway, I have a request about YouTube.
Okay.
If you could put the date, because you know it's useful or it's interesting to me to compare the date of the show with the newspaper, with the Daily Post, which is the only newspaper I read. If I'm sure it's possible. If you just put the date on there.
I don't know about that, Jimmy. I will ask.
It is.
I will ask tech support to do that. Okay. Hey, Real Joe Cruz, can you put the date on the YouTube post?
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
Yeah, I guess we got you covered, Jimmy.
And you know what happened to me?
What happened?
I was out walking around, and I was stopped by two GovGuam employees. And I knew they were GovGuam employees because of their BMI, about 5'6", 5'7" feet tall, about 300 pounds. And they asked me, "Are you now, or have you ever been, a member of the Real Joe Cruz fan club?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm not a founder, but I'm a card-carrying member."
Whoa. That'll prevent you from ever getting a job with the U.S. government, that's for sure.
And they said, you know, Tina Rose Munoz Barnes, she's going to keep an eye on you and two chins. And
that's some pretty acute surveillance, Jimmy.
Yeah, one of her eyes and two of her chins, and there's a $5,000 fine involved.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for being a card-carrying member of the Real Joe Cruz fan club.
Yeah, I can understand that, and it should be more, actually, I think.
Oh no! More chins or more fine?
Well, I think as far as chins are concerned, there's kind of a self-limiting proposition there, right?
Maybe.
You know, and Tina's not one to stick her neck out.
I didn't say that. Okay. Anyway, I'll let you go.
All right.
But I'll watch you tonight later.
Okay, Jimmy. Always a pleasure. Thanks for calling. Yeah, that's our Jimmy.
I'm glad he's alive to be on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, getting old is a terrible thing. I hope it happens to you, Real Joe Cruz.
Me too, sir.
Yeah, it's already happened to me. Yeah. No sense worrying about life too much because you'll never get out of it alive anyhow.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so where was I? I was talking about the card here when I got a call from Jimmy. So I'm going to start right out with Troy versus Janela. And we are up to, let's see here, day 11. It's been 11 days. Now, you recall that Janela had a spot of bother when the governor had a press conference, one of these, what do they call those things? That remote device?
Zoom conference.
Yeah, she had a Zoom conference, yeah. And Janela, when reporters tried to ask questions, Janela muted their microphones. And then after she unmuted them, she scolded them, saying, "We told you, you can only ask questions that are relative to the subject of this press conference." And the next day, the lieutenant governor, Josh Tenora, came out and said, "I apologize. That was wrong. I apologize." And Carlo Branch, who was there, should apologize, and Janella Carrera should apologize. Well, I think the next day, Carlo Branch apologized. But we never heard from Janella. So Troy picked up on that, and he started every day asking the lieutenant governor, when is Janella going to apologize? Like you told her to. And finally, we got a note from Crystal Paco San Augustine, who is also one of the communicators at Adelup, who said, Carlo Branch has publicly stated that he directed Ms. Carrera's actions that day, and the lieutenant governor is satisfied that he has taken full responsibility. As the responsible party, the apology was solely his to make. It has been abundantly clear, it has been made abundantly clear that this situation will not be repeated. So Janella got off the hook. Wasn't my fault. He told me to do it. Okay, so since Crystal Paco came out and let Janella off the hook, it has been 11 days since Janella shut down any reporters.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we're going to see, because Crystal Paco said it has been made abundantly clear this situation will not be repeated. So we're going to watch it like a hawk. Okay, and the next item on the agenda here on the card, it's Tina versus Emergency. And Tina's count is up to 6. Now, on the 20th of May, you'll recall, Tina sent a letter calling the legislature into special session the next day, telling everybody that she was calling it because emergency conditions existed. And she also, in that same letter, said that she was waiving the public hearing requirement for 4 bills. And the reason that she was waiving the public hearing requirement, you have to look at the statute. The presiding officer of the legislature certifies that emergency conditions exist involving danger to the public health or safety. So on the 20th of May, Tina determined that a danger existed, a danger to the public health or safety existed. That's why she waived the public hearing requirements on those 4 bills. Yeah. Pretty scary, huh? Yeah, well, I'll take a short break here, and I'll come back and tell you how I conquered my fear.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So on the 20th of May, when Tina came out with that letter, I'll bet she scared the pants off a lot of people here on the island. an emergency dealing with the health or safety of the people. So, I'm wondering, what is it? Is Kim Jong-un, did Kim Jong-un dispatch a rocket to Guam? Have the militant Red Chinese decided that the islands and the, off their coast aren't enough? Are they mounting an attack on Guam? Something to do with the Wuhan virus that's given us so much trouble? I thought, my gosh, an emergency dealing with the health or safety of the people. And the speaker certified it herself. Oh, I think, wow, this is really something. Well, as it so happened, when the legislature met the next day in an emergency session, a motion was made to recess so that those 4 bills could come on for public hearing on Friday. So why did Tina declare that emergency? Why did she scare the pants off of everybody talking about emergency to health or safety? I don't know, but not the kind of thing that we look for from elected officials. If you say it's an emergency, then you want people to react like, hey, this is an emergency, not like, oh, hey, there goes Tina again talking about another emergency. So we're going to keep track. So we've been safe since the 21st of May. That's why the count right now for Tina is, it's 6. So we've gone 6 days without an emergency dealing with the health or safety of the people of Guam. Because if there had been one, we would know it because Tina would have declared it. Yeah, so we haven't had any. I can't tell you how thankful I am for that and how thankful I am that Tina is on guard to detect any emergency dealing with the health or safety of the people. Okay, next item on the card is the other Governor, Leon Guerrero, versus Raging Lee and Titano. And I suppose I ought to explain a couple things here in case we have some new listeners on the line today. We deal with a senator who signs her name, who puts her name on bills and other official communications as Kelly Marsh, parenthesis, Titano, close parenthesis. So, it's the custom that when we refer to people, we refer to them as their last name or senator plus their last name. So I really found it takes an awful lot of time to say Senator Kelly Marsh, parenthesis, Titano, close parenthesis. You spend more time saying the word parenthesis and close parenthesis than you spend saying the senator's name. So I decided I would come up with this Tall Tales convention and assigned a sound value to the parenthesis sign. You know that little sign that looks like a C on the top row of your keyboard? Yeah, so when I get to that part of her name, instead of saying parenthesis, I just make the sound that I've assigned to the parenthesis. The parenthesis sounds like this. Therefore, when I read the senator's name, it sounds like this. Senator Kelly Marsh, Titano, much faster, much more economical. Don't you think that was a stroke of genius out there in our international radio listening audience, rather than listening to me say parenthesis, parenthesis, parenthesis all the time? Yeah. So this is the title of this is Ethics Committee Meeting to Investigate Complaint Against Senators United Nations Travel. So Ken LG filed this quite some time ago, and the subjects of the complaint are Raging Lee. Now, Senator Lee spells her name R-E-G-I-N, but there is a primary accent over the E, meaning that the first syllable of her first name is to be accented. Therefore, it would be raging. Well, that's too hard for my Midwestern American tongue to be dealing with every day. So rather than saying raging, I just say raging. Close enough for government work, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
So we've got the other governor, Leon Guerrero versus Raging Lee and Titano. Here's how the story goes. The Pacific News Center has learned that senators are meeting Wednesday, that's today, to discuss an ethics complaint brought forward against 2 current senators. Sources had confirmed that legislators are meeting to discuss the ethics complaint filed against Senators Raging Bisco Lee, and now it says Kelly Marsh here. I wonder if I guess it's the same person.
Could be.
Yeah. After their October 2019 travel to the United Nations to discuss Guam's fight for independence. Now that's really telling, isn't it? Guam's fight for, they went to the United Nations to discuss Guam's fight for independence. Real Joe Cruz, did you know that Guam is fighting for independence?
Yes, sir.
You did?
They fight every minute, every hour, sir.
Really?
Every day, every month, every year.
Independence. Wow.
Wait.
Oh, yeah, very good. Yeah, you can use it too, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, I know there's a small, extremely local group that are what we refer to on the program as separatists that are fighting for independence, but I didn't know that 2 of our senators have gone to the United Nations to fight for independence. Pretty interesting. The complaint was originally filed by Ken Guerrero, an advocate with Guam Citizens for Public Accountability. Lee and Marsh's travel to New York was funded by GovGuam. Leon Guerrero has stated that Guam is not a member of the United Nations. Taxpayers have no reason to fund a trip by a person elected to represent the interests of the people of Guam before the United Nations. And I agree. And I remember when this was on the front burner and I did some Freedom of Information Act correspondence with both of them. And if I could summarize their approach, well, we're for Chamorro self-determination, and that's why we went. So the exact language of the statute's not important. That's kind of the approach they took. We'll see. The Committee on Ethics and Standards is meeting over Zoom at 1 p.m. Wednesday, where senators will also vote on an Ethics and Standards Committee chairperson. 6 senators sit on the Quarter 1 Ethics Committee. Now, the membership of the committee changes every quarter. So I guess when they say Quarter 1, they mean first quarter. And the members are Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes, Amanda Shelton, Clinton Rigel, Joe San Augustine, William Castro, and James Moylan. Since legislative business was largely shut down due to Wuhan virus, the Q2 rosters of senators never officially assumed their posts. They would have taken over from April to June. The Speaker's office, who sent out the Zoom meeting request, said it can neither confirm nor deny an ethics complaint was received, all in the name of transparency. Ethics meetings called to discuss complaints against senators are generally closed to the media. The investigation is made public once complete. And then we've got this guy, Bohwani, again, who set us straight on the precedents of public hearings and sessions of the legislature as being governed by the standing rules, which is just wrong, but that's okay. Bohwani said, if and when an ethics committee chairman is voted upon that senator can then discuss anything further as it relates to the investigation. So, yeah, this was dead for quite some time. Apparently now it's been revived. So obviously we're going to watch this one very carefully. As I recall, these two, one senator went herself and one sent a member of her staff to this UN meeting, but the statute says that we can use public funds to attend meetings of group of which Guam is a member. Well, Guam is not a member of the United Nations, no matter how zealously we want to pursue Chamorro self-determination. Okay, so that's that item of the card. Next, the whole cockfighting issue is not going away. We've got a former Oklahoma Attorney General who asks for an investigation of game farms sending fighting roosters to Guam. Former Oklahoma Attorney General Drew Edmondson is part of a group working to put an end to cockfighting in the state. A letter sent to the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Oklahoma alleges the traffic of fighting birds, such as roosters, to Guam, an area where, until recently, that activity was legal. This comes from Coco TV, which is a TV station in Oklahoma City. Although it was illegal under U.S. law to ship birds to any state or territory anywhere in the world, Edmondson said, the investigation details hundreds of shipments and identifies the top 5 shippers of fighting roosters. 3 of the shippers live in Oklahoma. Our group now wants to see state and federal charges. Oklahoma is still a cockfighting capital of the U.S., Edmondson said. That's a serious charge, but a reality of the situation. Edmondson has been essential in seeing that the state version of the law was approved in 2002 when he was in office, with this message to others breaking state law. This is our first move. We're coming after you. This is now in the hands of the U.S. Attorney for Eastern District of Oklahoma for review. So if there are any gods and arrows out there who are still doing, oh, we'll do it underground, you know, all that grumbling, you know, Mayor Paco, anybody who knows about cockfighting and makes a report, just better watch out. Yeah. This is not going to go away. There's not going to be a return to normality for cockfighters where cockfights are the norm. So if you have been lucky up until now, probably a good idea not to push your luck any further. Okay, next I've got Jim Moylan versus Gillette Leonore, Guerrero, Michele Paris, and now Janela. And you'll recall that Jim Moylan put out a release yesterday. Governor, why are you hiring a director and a deputy director in the midst of a pandemic? And he called the governor for hiring a new director of CAHA and a new deputy director of DISID when both of the agencies are shut down. And neither position has been filled for quite some time. And Jim basically said this was a waste of money. I agreed with everything Jim said except for one thing, and I'm going to go back to that again. Jim says, I don't question the qualification of either individual hired. That would be Michele Paris and Gillette Leonore, Guerrero. I don't question the qualifications of each individual hired. And I took issue with that. I question their qualifications. They're going to be hired, put on the payroll, and told they can stay home and draw full pay. Now, in order to hire someone like that, that person must have some really super qualifications. I don't know, would we offer a deal like that maybe to Manny Pacquiao so that somebody else doesn't snap him up? Would we offer a deal like that if Albert Einstein, say, were cloned and were wandering around amongst us? Would we offer that kind of a deal to Albert Einstein to put him on the payroll, even though he wouldn't have to do anything, just because he would be such a feather in our cap and we'd be so anxious to get him because there would be other people offering him money to try to hire him so that we couldn't get him? Or would it be like hiring a LeBron James, right? A famous basketball player. If we could hire him for the same thing for $75,000 like we paid Michele Paris, would we do it even though he wouldn't be able to play or do anything else? Well, maybe, because just the fact that LeBron James is living here and on the government payroll would get us all kinds of unearned media. So this brings me back. What qualifications do Michele Paris and Gillette Leonore Guerrero have that it makes any sense at all to hire them and put them on the payroll when their agencies are closed and they can't go to work? Well, Janella explains it all. The government of Guam has hired another director, this time for CAHA, Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Agency, which isn't open during the pandemic. Gillette Leonore Guerrero has been hired recently as the agency's new director. Governor Lou Leonore Guerrero authorized Gillette Leonore Guerrero's hiring, but her paperwork started in February before the Wuhan virus pandemic, according to the governor's office. So now let me see what this means. So we decided in February that we would bring someone on board to head this agency that hasn't had a director for years. So we started then, and the bureaucratic process in the government of Guam is not one noted for its lightning speed. So as the process moves along from February on up to late May, finally the papers are cut and Gillette can come on board, causing me to ask, is the force of inertia so powerful in the government of Guam that once the process is begun, nothing can turn it off? One would think that given the, well, let me come back to this here. We're closing in on the home stretch. And I got another Joe coming up here. So we'll get to you right after we visit, it's not the home stretch. We'll get to you right after this break, real Joe Cruz. I mean, another Joe.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Bistro. They are open in Hagåtña and Tumon and ready for takeout and free delivery services in selected areas. Terms and conditions apply. Call Mezcla Hagåtña at 479-2652 or Tumon 969-2652. Get your Mezcla fix in the comfort of your own home.
Okay, so here we are, back again. We got about 8 more minutes to that big halftime show that we always enjoy so much, starting at about 1700. I know Another Joe is waiting very patiently for that halftime show, right, Another Joe?
Yep. Uncle Bob, I have a very bad habit of attempting to be considerate to others, and...
what are you doing on Tall Tales with a habit like that?
I know, right? It's terrible. Yeah, the word that you don't like so much, benefit of the doubt. So we're all speculating why the governor hired her. You say her relative. If I were to guess, I'd say she was at another place off island. She was employed elsewhere off island, and she was recruited to take over as director. And so once having arrived here, the timing was off, and the caja was closed, right? But you still got someone who has been promised that they're going to be the director of something, and they moved from off island, and they're paying for their expenses and what have you. I don't know. This is all speculation. I'm just saying these are things that you come across. Like for example, when 9/11 occurred, when they had hiring freezes and they had only essential personnel and what have you. But the other thing is, remember, the governor that is heavily invested in the She was heavily invested in the FESPAC and this cultural theme. And I don't know, I guess you could say Chamorro culture or some kind of mutated aloha hula dancing culture. I don't know, but so in order to take control of that aspect of local I guess you could say lifestyle or influence, she has to have a director in place and giving her control of whatever it is that Caja has influence over. I don't know what they would have influence over, Uncle Bob. Do you know much about Caja other than possibly hula dancing?
Yeah, they have something that looks like an art gallery. I don't know where it is right now. I can remember it. Something that looks like an art gallery. And other than that, I don't know exactly what they do. I'm going to compliment you for introducing a concept that I've been meaning to bring forward here, Another Joe. The concept is called Barnyard Equity. So, and what you're saying is, well, she was recruited to come from off island. She got here. And because of the Wuhan virus, she couldn't go to work. Therefore, applying a hefty dose of Barnyard Equity will give her a job where she doesn't have to work, but can still draw a check. And Barnyard Equity probably works pretty well, and it can work well in private businesses or family business, but not with my money.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. And I happen to know that Gillette Leonore Guerrero was not hired from off island. She's always been here. As far as FESPAC is concerned, it was just announced a couple days ago that Hawaii has postponed FESPAC until 2024. So that's why I always warn you, Another Joe, this giving the people the benefit of the doubt is going to get you in trouble someday.
Yeah. Okay, Uncle Bob, thanks for your time and your wisdom there, and I'll just keep listening. Have a great day.
Thanks, Another Joe. Yeah. I've mentioned this before, Real Joe Cruz, but when you say, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, what you're really saying is, as I listened to his facts, what he was telling me, it didn't seem right to me. What he told me was doubtful.
Yes.
But I decided to do what he wanted me to do anyhow. Yeah, that comes under the rubric of that old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one, sir.
Very good. The benefit of the doubt. So here we are back with Gillette Leonore, Guerrero, with Jim Moylan versus Gillette Leonore, Guerrero, and Michele Paris. And if anyone can figure out a really good reason to hire these two people for jobs that haven't been filled for years in a situation where they can't go to work but draw full pay anyhow, please let us know what it is. Because I quibble with Jim. I do question their qualifications. If that's the position that you're going to be slotted into, you better be really qualified along the lines of what I mentioned, LeBron James or maybe some famous movie star or something like that. Okay, going on with the article. Governor Leonore Guerrero authorized Gillette's hiring, but her paperwork started in February before the Wuhan virus epidemic. So, okay, it did, and that was February, and now it's May. So when the governor declared the state of emergency and she knew that the CAHA agency was going to be closed, why didn't she stop the hiring? Is government of Guam bureaucratic inertia like a huge 100-car freight train that once it's rolling, you can't stop it no matter what? That's what Janella wants us to believe here. Oh, yeah, well, we started that in February, and, you know, once it started, we can't stop it. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show. I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They've been fired. Will they be charged? I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. 4 Minneapolis police officers involved in the arrest and death of suspect George Floyd relieved of their guns and badges Tuesday afternoon.
This is still an ongoing criminal matter that the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is investigating, as well as our FBI.
That's Minneapolis Police Chief Medaria Arredondo.
Cell phone video recorded by multiple bystanders Monday night show Floyd detained on the ground with one of the officers kneeling on his neck for several minutes. Floyd struggles to yell out, "I can't breathe," multiple times before he's silent.
That's reporter Christina Palladino of Fox 9 in Minneapolis. Floyd was pronounced dead at the hospital. Tuesday evening, protesters demanded the 4 officers be charged with murder, some throwing rocks at a police station and damaging police cars. The White House defending the decision to fire several inspectors general in the last few weeks.
The White House counsel's office has responded to Senator Chuck Grassley, the Republican from Iowa. He made a request for reasons behind the recent termination of a pair of inspectors general. The White House says it followed the law in its notification to Congress and used the very same standards as President Obama did. Grassley, of course, says without sufficient explanation, it is still fair to question the president's rationale.
Fox's Kevin Corke, but Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan telling Fox News at night.
This president has been faced with more attacks from more places than any president ever, and he's entitled to have the people in office supporting his administration so he can get done what he told the American people he was going to do.
New optimism about coronavirus numbers sent the Dow to nearly 25,000 points on Tuesday, up 529 points. Dow futures are trading nearly 150 points higher. Asian stock markets closing Wednesday mixed. America is listening to Fox News.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the family's refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
It's launch day, or so they hope, at Cape Canaveral, Florida.
2 NASA astronauts are slated to fly a demo mission aboard SpaceX's Dragon capsule to the International Space Station.
Regular human-rated spacecraft flights from the United States. That's what we're trying to do here.
NASA Deputy Administrator James Morhard says today will inaugurate a new mode of reaching space involving private enterprise, specifically U.S. businesses.
We're really trying to turn over low Earth orbit to the commercial world so NASA can focus on the moon, cislunar space, Mars, and deep space, because that's next.
It'll be the first human space flight to depart from the U.S. since the final shuttle flew 9 years ago. Eben Brown, Fox News.
President Trump and Vice President Pence both planning to attend the launch. The weather could be a factor with today's scheduled launch just after 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Vice President says testing for the coronavirus has expanded across the country.
All 50 states have tested more than 2% of their population, giving us a much greater capacity to identify outbreaks as they occur and protect our citizens.
Barbers and hair salons in several California counties are back in business, or will be soon.
47 of the 58 counties currently have self-attested to having those plans of action in place. Along those lines, they will be able to add in barbershops and hair salons to those regional variations.
California's Governor Gavin Newsom, the remainder of the state's counties, including San Francisco, still working to meet the reopening guidelines. Only about half of Americans surveyed say they'd get a COVID-19 vaccine if the scientists working furiously to create one succeed. This according to a new poll from the Associated Press and the NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Grab and win up to $500 with Budweiser from now until July. Pick up Bud Family and Lime-A-Rita Family 12-packs, fill out the entry form inside, and place it in the drop box for your chance to win up to $500. Budweiser will be drawing winners weekly, so head to Current Guam on Facebook or Instagram to see if you're a lucky winner. Must be 21 to participate. See currentguam.com for rules, drop box locations, and more info. Budweiser reminds you to please drink responsibly.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Hofity, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Another great show. Here we are back again for the second half of Tall Tales, and I just left off with Kaha and Dissid and the two new employees who were brought on board just in time to stay home and get paid for staying home. I wonder what their qualifications are that makes them that valuable. I have a news story here from the Post that gets into it. And a quote from Janella, each of these hires, meaning Gillette Leonore, Guerrero, and Michele Paris, each of these hires was initiated prior to the Wuhan virus pandemic, said Janella Carrera, Director of Communications at Adelup. The fact that a prior administration saw fit to shortchange agency leadership for the disabled and the arts says more about them than it does about us. Classic case of the, let's see, et tuo quoque logical fallacy. And you did it too, right? And you Republicans, well, actually, no, you Republicans did it worse, because by not filling those two positions, you show that you had no feeling for either the disabled or for the arts. Very good, Janella. The fact that a prior administration saw fit to shortchange agency leadership for the disabled and the fine arts says more about them than it does about us. And I would have to agree. The fact that the prior administration didn't fill a needless or useless position at Dissid, and the fact that when it came to Kaha, Governor Calvo had reorganized and put Kaha under the umbrella of the Bureau of, or the Department of Chamorro Affairs. So he was able to actually consolidate and reduce the headcount of government agencies. That does tell us more about his administration than about this one. Moylan goes on to say hiring of a director for Guam Council on Arts and Humanities and deputy director for the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disabilities. It's disappointing to read media reports that indicate that the governor's hirings of a director and a deputy director in the midst of this Wuhan virus crisis, and even at that, for non-essential agencies. So this administration is so committed to the arts and to the disabled that it will put well-paid people in positions at non-functioning agencies. That really shows their commitment. Well, I don't question the qualifications of either individual hired, and of course I do, and I've made that quite clear. I wonder what the priorities of this administration are. Kaha was previously administered through the Department of Chamorro Affairs, so it had no director of its own. The current administration decided to remove it from the DCA umbrella, turn it into a standalone agency, and provide a director. Dissid hasn't had a deputy director for about a decade. Gillette Leonore Guerrero was approved by the Kaha board on March 3, though she was nominated in February, Carrera stated. Leonore Guerrero's new pay wasn't immediately available, but her subordinate makes more than $64,000 in the four-person agency, according to government staffing records. Michele L.C. Paris, was hired in April as the Dissid deputy director at a rate of $76,345 per year. Carrera noted that Paris was nominated in January. So, boy, inertia so strong. No matter what, once you nominate someone, no matter what, they've got to be seated in those in those well-paying jobs for which they don't have to do anything. This is really something. You can't even in a program like Tall Tales, you can't exaggerate your way into something like this. Truth is indeed stranger than fiction. Okay, next we've got courts versus the legislature. And as you know, there are 4 bills pending before the legislature for which a public hearing will be held on Friday. All 4 of them are signs of senators scrambling to pander to government employees and not pandering quite as severely as Tina did when on May 20 she declared the special session, or she called a special session, and then waived the public hearing requirement. But it's obviously an attempt to grandstand in front of a group of government employees who have not missed a paycheck since the Wuhan virus epidemic began, have not missed a single paycheck, but now are kvetching because they weren't given double pay. Now, this is at a time when a lot of people have not received any paycheck for weeks. So there are 2 legal themes involved here, one of which involves Tom Fisher and his suit for, not a suit, his petition for a writ of mandate on behalf of a police officer named Steve Topaznia. Now, a writ of mandate is a paper issued from the court that requires a public official to do a ministerial duty where the beneficiary of that duty has no adequate remedy at law. Now that's quite a mouthful for the situation that we're in, when what we're dealing with is the interpretation of an administrative rule. But the latest story says that the matter was to come on for hearing yesterday, but Tom Fisher had not served the Attorney General with the petition for writ of mandate. Therefore, the case couldn't go forward yesterday. So when a litigant is suing the government of Guam, if he's suing a director, not only must the director be served, but the Attorney General's office must be served, which means you take those papers over and you give them to a responsible person at those offices. And when you sue the government, you don't sue the Department of Administration. You sue the Director of Administration, or you sue the Chief of Police. So papers would have had to have been served on the Chief of Police, the Director of Administration, Ed Byrne, who was the Director of Administration, and the Attorney General's office. But because the Attorney General's office wasn't served, the hearing couldn't go forward. A counsel for the Attorney General's office did show up. He'd found out about the suit, came to court, said, I haven't been served. Judge Sikola said, okay, you file your opposition by Thursday and we'll go forward on Friday. Now, in the meantime, another news story comes out and says that 100 more people have joined Fisher's and Topaznia's suit looking for double pay. Now, I don't know if that means that the petition was amended to add 100 more petitioners, or if those people just signed some paper. The news story was not very complete. Left more questions than it did answers. But the thing that the news story highlighted was the classic man bites dog. One of the 100 was an employee of the Attorney General's office, so that'll show you, right? So, as I said, what we're talking about here is an interpretation of Rule 8.406. And I'm going to go into that. I've done it. I've gone into it at some length before. I'm going to go into it at some length again. But it doesn't say what people want it to say. It doesn't use the words heroic frontliners. The word frontliners is not in the rule at all. It's very flat language. And basically what it does, and I'm glad another Joe allowed me to use the phrase barnyard equity. What it does, it basically creates two categories of people who the categorization arises after the governor declared the emergency. One category of people has to go to work, same jobs they always had. If you're a nurse, you go to work at the hospital. If you're a cop, you go out and catch crooks. If you're a fireman, you put out fires, and so on. That's one category of workers. The other category was people who get to stay home and draw full pay for doing nothing. The Gillette Leonore, Guerrero, Michele type worker. So it appears to me that whoever drafted 8.406 through some misbegotten sense of barnyard equity, decided that if we're going to pay some employees for not working, then we've got to pay the employees who work even more. So we came down with Category 1, those who get paid and don't have to work. Category 2, those who have to work. So if you actually have to work, you should get paid for working, but then you should get that Category 1 pay too, just like everybody else who didn't have to work. So you add it all up and you come up with double pay. It is not logical, sports fans. Now, those especially in the legislature who would pander to those employees who want the double pay use terms like frontliner and, sacrifice, etc. When people were just doing the same job that they've always done. Now, as far as a hospital is concerned, nurses work at the hospital. The hospital is inhabited by sick people. That's why we have a hospital. There is a lot of disease in the hospital. There's a lot of bacteria and virus and fungi and things like that in a hospital. I've read articles that say a hospital is one of the most unhealthy places that the average person goes to. So we should pay a nurse double pay for doing what she got hired for in the first place, which was to work in the hospital. It's not logical at all. And of course, when I run into something like this, like when I run into Michele and Gillette Leonore Guerrero, I have this nasty question that I always like to spring on people. It goes like this: who's going to pay for this? So with respect to this barnyard equity double pay, to pay someone for doing his job double pay, I want to know who's going to pay for it. Now, I have another nasty habit of taking politicians at their word. If Tina says there's an emergency dealing with health and safety, then I'm going to take her at her word, even if she had her fingers crossed behind her back when she said it. With respect to the governor, she vetoed Bill 343, and she said that if it became law, it would cost $36 million and probably result in furloughs of government employees. So if we go forward with this double pay, where is the $36 million going to come from? Now, I see this guy over here in the Lazy Boy saying, it comes from the CARES funds, that federal money that we're going to get, they'll reimburse us. And my answer to that is, I understand that the CARES fund won't pay any bonuses. So what is the definition of a bonus? A bonus is something that you pay to somebody outside of his salary for some sort of an exceptional performance after the performance has been completed. Does that sound like the 4 bills before the legislature? Well, the reason it sounds like that, because that's what it is. So I don't agree with a lot of the things that the governor has done, but I do agree with this. She has come up with an interpretation that Rule 8.406 does not apply because no agency was closed and because no one was given an excused absence. So she did issue an executive order on the 16th of March where she said those people who are not on the job site are still on duty and are to report in 2 hours. So she's claiming that no one is on excused absence, which is one of the three tests for the double pay. And she's also saying that no one none of these people who went to work went to a closed agency. And this is what I call the burn catch-22. If Mr. X goes to Department ABC and there's a big sign on the door that says closed, but X is assigned to Department ABC and he goes in there and starts answering the phone, well, obviously Department ABC is open. How do I know that? Because X is inside working. So the governor has come up with this interpretation where she says she doesn't have to pay the double pay. From a fiscal integrity standpoint, I got to say, I'm with you on that one. On the double pay, I make the argument that it never makes any sense to build any kind of a pay structure or policy based on the strange circumstance where you pay people not to work. We pay this guy $50,000 a year not to work. This guy over here does the same kind of work. He'll draw $50,000 when he goes to work, but because the other guy got paid for staying home, we got to give this guy $100,000. I don't think you would find a business in the world that would ever even consider such an idea. And I don't think that you would do it in your own personal affairs. Let's say, I'm going to come back to the kid that mows your lawn right after the break. And I have a rare, unexpected treat for you right after the break. I've got one of the hours on the line.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So here we are, seventh-inning stretch. Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. And we go from Wrigley Field straight back here to our studio. And I got a note from Lynn. Lynn, I'm going to have to read this later, this interesting story you sent me, but thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm going to tell a little story myself here to illustrate the illogicality of this whole double pay thing. Let's say that you are not the government. And let's say that you hire 2 boys to mow your lawn, Jim and John. They come every week and mow your lawn. You pay each of them $5. Well, one Saturday, Jim comes over and says, John can't come today. Mom won't let him go outside. Oh, okay. So Jim says, I'm only going to mow half the lawn. You say, okay. And then Jim says, are you going to pay John? And I say, no, I'm not going to pay John because he didn't come to mow the lawn. Can't you please pay John? So, all right, I take a note from another Joe and I'll say, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll pay. John's been a good boy. I kind of like him. Probably not his fault he can't come to work today. So I'll give him $5 too. And then a little later on, Jim has finished mowing his half of the lawn, and he comes to me, he comes to you, and he says, now, are you going to give me $10? You say, why would I give you $10? You only mowed half the lawn. Well, you gave John $5 for not working at all. So if he got $5 for not working at all, I should get that $5 plus the $5 for mowing half the lawn. There you go. I don't think you'd do either one of them. You wouldn't pay somebody who didn't come to work, and you wouldn't pay somebody else double because somebody else didn't come to work. That's where we are with this thing. Okay, well, with no further ado, I take you now directly to the luxurious digs of another car, as you were, our Carl. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Good afternoon, Bob. This thing about our Carl, I'm actually considering having my name legally changed to our Carl because it's such a prestigious thing. The problem is that once you become an Our Carl or an Our Steve or an Our Dave or an Our Joe, one of the hours, once you join that prestigious clique, everything else is downhill from there.
Yeah, once you get to the top of the mountain, everything looks like it's downhill.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what else is there? It's like, astronauts that went to the moon after they came back, they became so depressed because they'd kind of, they reached the ultimate. So, wow, what else is there to do after you go to the moon? So, once you become one of the hours, I don't know. What else is there?
I can see what you're saying, Carl. Yeah.
I just want to chime in about this issue about the hospitals being a dangerous environment. When my wife was, in her 6-year battle with breast cancer, there was a period, maybe within the last couple of years, where she became ill and I needed to take her into the hospital. She had a chemo port in her left upper chest, and someone accessed the port, which I found out later they technically weren't supposed to do. That's for the cancer clinic. So they accessed the port and gave her some medication, and someone neglected to take out the J-hook, which, you hook in the plastic tube into and the chemicals go through. So someone forgot to take out that J-hook, which is shaped like a J, and to wipe it down and then put a sterile gauze over it and a bandage. And as a result, there's quite a dangerous bacteria, especially if your immune system is compromised. It's called Pseudomonas. So Pseudomonas, some of that Pseudomonas bacteria, which is floating around the hospital, it's very, very common in the hospital environment. It entered her port, and over the course of the next several weeks, she began to periodically have half-hour, 45-minute periods where she felt like she was at the North Pole. And, we couldn't figure out what was going on. Eventually, she was starting to become delirious, and it was obvious that she was going to die if something didn't change. So I took her to the cancer clinic, and I begged them, to figure out what's happening because she's dying. And one of the nurses, luckily, happened to guess, I think she's got an infection. And they examined, they tested her port, and it was infested with Pseudomonas. So it's a dangerous environment, they constantly have to deal with that. As far as the danger of this Wuhan virus or whatever virus you want to call it, the CDC recently came out with some statistics that show that by far the vast majority of people who die from it are in the 60, 70, 80 range. The higher you go, the more risk there is as far as age. Children have virtually no risk, and people below 60 have little risk, very little, unless they've got an underlying health problem like asthma or bronchitis or other issues that make them susceptible. But for most people, it's not very risky. So I just wanted to put that in some...
So you concur with my theory then, Carl, that nurses work in hospitals. Hospitals have sick people. Bacteria, virus, and fungi are not very healthy places to start with, right?
Yeah, and that's factored into their pay. They are, they get paid pretty well, and they deserve it. They have...
And part of it is because of the environment in which they work. Exactly.
Yeah, and you can tell it's worth it because there's a lot of people that become nurses.
So now,
if it wasn't worth it, they'd have to keep jacking up the pay to get people to be willing to take the risk.
So now we have a situation where, because we have the Wuhan virus in town, senators are tripping over one another saying, these nurses are heroes because they go to work at the hospital.
Yeah, and what created the problem was early on deciding to treat public sector employees, which is about 1/4 of the labor force, different from 3/4 of the labor force, the private sector, and allow them to, people who don't work, to go home and be paid for staying home. Private sector employees, most of them, the vast majority, can't do that. So I think what Lou should have done, and everyone has 20/20 hindsight, is to say, we need to furlough some of you, just like the private sector. You can go home, and unfortunately we can't pay you, but some of you are critical, police, and fire and nurses, we'll pay them because they're coming into work. That would have, I think, it would have avoided a lot of their problems they're having now. But she created, as you mentioned, a two-class system of workers, and so they created the mess that they're having to deal with. So that's where they're at. Oh, and by the way, early on, we didn't know what we were facing, so some of this is pardonable. It's understandable. Rahm Emanuel's brother, who's a doctor, predicted that over 100 million people would die from this virus, this Wuhan virus. 100 million people. There was another source that was predicting 14 million, and I think a third source was predicting 2 million. And we're at a tiny fraction of that now, which is still tragic. But, we need to put some perspective on this whole thing.
I agree, Carl. Well, thanks for chiming in and telling us about the hospital environment.
Okay, Bob. Thanks for allowing me to chime in. I appreciate it, and great show as usual.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have Tom Poole who Tom Poole has forgotten more about epidemiology than most people will ever know. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon, Judge. I did want to underscore something that our Carl said that I think he was, of course, everything he usually says is right. Everything he said today I agreed with completely. But one thing I think that we need to underscore is the fact that the statistics are bearing out that it's not so much age that makes you susceptible to the Wuhan virus as much as it is the comorbidities. Now, in as much as the comorbidities often, go along with age. And so, but it's important to make that distinction that it's truly the comorbidities that increase your susceptibility rather than simply the age. That is, some of the numbers that I sent you before, and I've continued to follow them. As far as I've seen, I think Massachusetts is doing the best job that I found yet as far as compiling their data and running the numbers properly. And so they're at around 4,000 deaths now for the state. And of those, almost 99%, it's just short of 99% of their deaths, had one or more serious comorbidities. Their average age was 82 years of age, average age of death. But the important thing to me is that it's the comorbidities. And I think you're 82, aren't you, Judge? I don't know if you have any.
No, I'm only 81.
81,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
This is a young guy.
You seem more mature than 81, so but forgive me for
thank you
for missing that. But I don't think you have any serious comorbidities that I'm aware of anyway. You might, but if you're not diabetic and you don't have emphysema or cancer or then your risk is probably, not significantly different than when you were 50. That's what the numbers are telling me. So it's real. And if you're 40 and have serious comorbidities, then you're probably much more susceptible than someone who is 80 and doesn't have the comorbidities. So it's just wanted to underline that it's your overall health rather than your age. That's what the numbers are saying to me.
I think Ray has made the remark on the morning show that more people on Guam have died from Spam and white rice than will ever die from the Wuhan virus.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but that's pithy and probably accurate too. Yeah, yes, sir. That's good. Anyway, I just wanted to share that, Judge. Thanks for hearing me out.
It's always good to have you call in, Tom. Thank you for calling.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Yeah, well, one of the guys who really understands this stuff and comorbidities. So, if you don't be like Mickey Mantle, who died when I think Mickey Mantle was like 67, had some kind of a transplant, heart transplant, I believe. And shortly before they gave him the heart transplant, he said, if I'd known I was going to last so long, I'd have taken better care of myself. So if you want to be able to avoid these things, take better care of yourself. No high blood pressure, no diabetes, no emphysema, and Ray has a good point. Spam and white rice, not the most healthy. Not the most healthy thing you can see. What?
Sorry, sir. That's made me hungry.
Do you have a Spam tree in your yard, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir. No Spam tree.
You don't go out and pick a can of Spam off the tree?
No, sir.
All right. Okay, so much for that. So let's see. I was talking about courts versus the legislature, but I saw one Facebook post that I want to go back to. It goes back to Dissid and Michele Paris. Let's see if I can find that here. Yeah, here it is. Commenting on Janella's statement that the fact that the previous administration didn't fill the deputy director's position at Dissid, and this administration did. And this poster says, yes, it does say more. The Republicans knew a deputy director at DISID was a useless position. Frankly, if Lew and company actually cared about the disabled, they would take that money and hire counselors who can actually help young people get jobs. DISID has never done much of anything for people they are supposed to serve. I have a young adult with disabilities who lost her counselor, parenthesis, who was actually threatening to help, close parenthesis, and no one has taken her case. And I even know the DISID director, she says. So this poster says, yeah, what Janella says is absolutely right. It tells you more about the previous administration than this one, because the previous administration knew that the position of deputy director of DISID was useless. Okay, good post. All right, so we're going on now to courts and legislature. And I mentioned that we have a suit, a petition for writ of mandate on file, filed by Tom, why do I always forget his name? What is his name? Tom Fisher. Yeah. See, Tomasz Pescadot. Yeah. Yeah, Tom Fisher has filed a petition for writ of mandate on behalf of Stephen Topaznia. And of course, this lawsuit, this petition for writ of mandate, will turn on the court's interpretation of Rule 8.406, not on who's a frontline worker or what was dangerous or that sort of thing. And as I mentioned earlier, Steve Topaznia is a police officer too, so he's doing the same work now that he's always done. He's a cop. He writes traffic tickets or catches crooks or goes on donut runs or whatever it is that cops do. There you go. Yeah. So, so that suit pens, and then there is a threat of litigation, and this is a story from the Post. 600 joined union lawsuit over double pay. Now, you'd think from reading the headline here that you'd find a lawsuit with 600 plaintiffs versus somebody, but that's not quite what the story says. Some 600 employees have so far decided to join the Guam Federation of Teachers lawsuit to seek payment of unpaid work performed during the Wuhan virus pandemic, according to GFT Representative Robert Koss. Now, they're seeking payment for unpaid work? In other words, they went to work and they didn't get a check? Something is out of socket here. Koss said GFT will turn over the list of plaintiffs to the attorney today so he can finalize the pleadings. Now, I would like this letter a lot better if I knew what the attorney's name was. He believes the case will be filed in federal court on behalf of public employees who worked during the state of emergency. Well, that's an interesting sentence because federal court, that is the District Court of Guam, only has jurisdiction to hear cases that arise under the Constitution and laws of the United States or brought by the citizens of one state against the citizens of another state. I don't see either one of those elements here, so I'm wondering why Koss believes that the case will be filed in federal court. This article leaves a lot more questions than answers. The case will be filed when final product is approved, Cost said. I wonder what final product is, and I wonder who has to approve it. Personnel who worked through the Wuhan virus pandemic, from nurses to police officers, have been demanding double pay. The GF case is separate from a lawsuit filed in local court last week by attorney Tom Fisher on behalf of police officer Steve Topaznia, seeking to compel GovGuam to compensate essential employees with double pay for hours they're required to work during the public health emergency. I think Fisher's case, and I read the petition, doesn't seek to compel GovGuam to compensate essential employees. I think it seeks to compel the government of Guam to compensate Steve Topaznia. Plans of filing a lawsuit to recover unpaid wages became more pronounced when Governor Leon Guerrero vetoed Bill 326-35, which would have adopted the governor's Wuhan virus differential pay tiers into law and specified that essential employees were entitled to double pay on top of GovGuam's differential pay. Now that's correct, and you really have to look, you have to take a hard look at what's labeled paragraph 4 in Bill 326, because of the language, it basically turns Rule 8.406 into a statute that does not have the same requirements as the rule currently does. So when this all came along, you know, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I mentioned this for quite some time. I couldn't figure out what was going on because the governor introduced this Wuhan virus differential pay, and I'm thinking, why would she do that when Rule 8.406 already provides for double pay? And then I did some FOIAs back and forth with Janella trying to find out what the coordination between 8.406 and the Wuhan virus pay schedule was. And I got nowhere with it. And I was almost about to conclude that the people at the governor's office don't know about 8.406. But later events turned out that I was wrong. They knew exactly about it, and they invented a theory by which they wouldn't have to pay double pay under 8.406. That's the reason, you know, then it made sense that the governor would come out with her Wuhan virus pay. Coming up to the home stretch, and I'll try to wrap this up before the program's over.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East-West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, heading down the home stretch of Tall Tales for the end of another perfect day here on Tall Tales. And I've been explaining the governor's Wuhan virus differential pay schedule, the double pay that some government of Guam employees claim would require that they be paid double pay according to Rule 8.406, trying to unsnarl all of this. So when the governor decided that she wasn't going to pay the 8.406 pay, it made sense to come up with the double pay, the differential pay tiers. She does not have the authority to do that. The governor is really good at making vague references to Chapter 19 of Title 10, but she doesn't have the authority to create that differential pay schedule. She did it anyhow. So that she got some press out of that, and finally the administration came clean when John Jr. Calvo, the acting chief of staff, said, no, we're not going to pay the double pay. And Ed Byrne, the director of administration, explained the theory. Nobody's on excused leave, and the government of Guam is not closed. Therefore, the Rule 8 doesn't apply. So, so we've got the one petition for writ of mandate pending. We've got some saber rattling here by the GFT. And then we have 4 bills introduced by senators that would provide double pay to those who actually went to the jobs and performed the work that we hired them for in the first place. So I got to wonder if this story about 600 employees deciding to join the lawsuit, I'm just wondering if that perhaps is not a means of telling people in the legislature, hey, we're pretty serious about this. If you don't enact one of those bills, we'll sue. But I would think that a thinking senator, in the face of this saber rattling, and in the face of Tom Fisher's petition for writ of mandate, would just sit back and say, we'll hold up any action on these 4 bills. There's obviously a dispute as to what the language of 8.406 means. Let's let the court decide it. If the court says it has to be paid, it has to be paid. If not, it doesn't have to be. But of course, senators are not going to be able to campaign on that. It's not much of a campaign line to say, you know, when you guys were down here banging on the door saying, we want double pay, my position was, well, let's let the court decide. Well, I'm not going to vote for you then. If you didn't stick up for me on that double pay, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm only going to vote for senators that were really looking out for my double pay. So they're noisy. They're going to attract a lot more attention than quiet guys like me who sit in the background and say, I'm not going to vote for any of you guys that pandered to this whole double pay thing in such a fiscally irresponsible manner. And I have a feeling that if you did a head count, there are a whole lot more of me's than there are them's. Because we got a lot of people here that, well, let me read something else that I brought in for today's topic. Emergency food distribution in Tizon maxes out before 6 a.m. The line at Tizon baseball field is closed and no other cars will be allowed for emergency food distribution program. At 5:15 a.m., there were already the maximum number of cars in line for today's distribution of 2,000 food bags and boxes, according to the governor's office. 2,000 people or 2,000 cars lined up at 5:15 waiting for the line to commence at 6 a.m. so they could get a food bag. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, that's not most people's idea of fun. You know, and we're not talking about, we're not talking about a gift certificate to Mescala or something like that. We're talking about canned goods in these food bags. So an awful lot of people are at the point where they will show up at 5:15 and wait in this long line for this food bag because they haven't been able to work and they're not getting paid. So, you know, I saw one figure, 18,000 people. So there are an awful lot of people on this island that haven't seen a regular paycheck. Now, what kind of a spectacle are senators creating when they're tripping over each other, when Senator Tina Rose calls the legislature into special session and waives the public hearing requirement on four double pay bills, because, you know, the people want action. What kind of a picture are we painting when we've got that, and at the same time 2,000 cars in line at 5:15 in the morning to pick up some charity food? Are our priorities really screwed up? You can't draw any other conclusion, and the place we start here is this, that we're paying people for staying home. We're giving them a full check. The stay-homes have never missed a payday. And because of some sense of mistaken barnyard equity, since those guys got to stay home and get paid, then it's only fair that we pay the people who went to work double. And if we're talking about fairness, how about the folks that lost their jobs and can't go back to work because the governor won't let the businesses reopen? Okay, well, we'll work on this again tomorrow. Been another perfect day here on Tall Tales. Out there in our international radio listening audience, I'm glad you could join us today, or I could join you. We'll see you tomorrow.